Hello, this is Diane Gremmel for the New Era Times, an online newspaper bridging spirituality and science. And today we have a fascinating guest, Dr. Elisa Medhus, who wrote a book called My Son in the Afterlife. Dr. Medhus was a logical, left-brained physician who had to confront her feelings about life and death at the tragic passing of her son. So today we're going to be talking to her about how her life has changed, how her perspective has changed, and how many people's lives have changed from reading her blog and reading this book. The book again is My Son and the Afterlife. Welcome, Doctor. It's very nice.
Diane, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. And we're so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So we want to ask you about Eric, is your son.
Yes.
And I've read this book. I find him quite interesting, affable, intelligent. But what I want to hear from you is, who was Eric when Eric was alive?
Gosh, he was so sweet, so sensitive, very affectionate. I remember when we brought him home from the pediatricians, he got in his age. It was like 18 months, 2 years old, and he had Band-Aids all over his thighs. So he came home, and his father, my husband, looked at him and felt so sorry for him and said, "Are you okay, buddy?" And he had his head leaning on my shoulder, and he was patting me to comfort me and said, "I have a good time." So he really doesn't like anybody.
He had
to give
empathy for
He
people,
did.
even as just a toddler. He had empathy for people. So,
but as he grew up,
did you? Yes, I'm sorry. Did you find his sensitivity was difficult for him?
absolutely. He was plagued with learning disabilities. One teacher said, "You're stupid," to him.
Oh my God!
I know, and he had Tourette's.
Okay.
That made him the target of bullying and teasing.
Right.
And yeah, he was very sensitive. He had a difficult time. Here's one story that sort of typifies who Eric is or was. I kind of don't know which word to use.
I like is.
I like is too.
Yeah.
He liked to go to the Starbucks in our neighborhood all the time. I think, well, part of it was he was lonely, right? And another part is he wanted to bum some smokes. That guy smoked ciggies like they were no tomorrow.
He felt sort of disconnected from the rest of the world.
He did, but for some reason, strangers would just be drawn to him.
They sensed his empathy.
Perhaps so, and they would sit with him, and eventually they'd start sharing their very sad life stories, and Eric would listen. He was such a good listener. And eventually the person would burst into tears, and Eric would hug them and say, "Look, dude, come home with me.
A born healer.
My mom is going to cook you a home-cooked meal." So that was, surprise.
I was struck in reading the book by what seemed like his kindness and compassion for people. So, if you want to continue the story, Eric had some issues with depression, correct?
He had bipolar disease, and it was so severe. We took him to a therapist, a psychiatrist every week. He was surrounded by love. But you know, sometimes bipolar disease is a terminal one. I found out later when asking him through Jamie, the medium, we'll talk about her later, that it was his spiritual contract to come here and suffer.
Okay.
Suffer so that he could develop the listening skills and the compassion and other tools that he would need to
understand.
Yes, to understand and become a better teacher.
Okay. Let's go back to before all of this occurred with your son and your son's passing. Would you describe yourself as a skeptic, an agnostic? How would you describe yourself?
Well, I was raised by two atheists, so that certainly didn't help.
Okay, so there's no spiritual background whatsoever for you.
No, I just didn't think about life after death.
Okay, and you're a physician, so...
I'm a physician, so my whole world is science.
Yes.
And for me, you had to perceive it with your five senses in order for it to be real. So that's what science taught me.
Okay. So when you encountered, would you like to tell us a little about what happened with Eric?
Yeah, certainly. We went out to lunch. I asked Eric if he wanted to go. He was in a little trouble because he pawned some of our valuables.
Why did he do that?
Oh, you know, he was just looking for something to soothe the pain. It was he wanted to look for something and buy something. Actually, he pawned it for a hunting rifle, so it's kind of ironic. And he just needed that fix.
Okay,
all
so
the time.
there was that type of an addictive quality to his personality.
Right.
Okay.
Just give me something to
Ease the pain.
feel joy over, ease the
Okay.
pain, exactly. And I said, you want to come with us? He said, no, I just chill here for a while.
Mhm.
And we went to lunch. Thank God I said, I love you. We always say I love you when we close on the phone or when we leave, etc. And I got a call from the housekeeper in Spanish. She said, Elisa, I heard a loud noise. I'm really scared. So I don't know. I just knew. We don't have any guns in the house. I mean, apparently one of his older friends bought him one.
Okay.
Yeah, because he liked guns. And I asked her, can you go check Eric's room? You don't have to, but you know.
Mm-hmm.
And she did. And oh my gosh, that scream! It was awful. So we drove home as quickly as we could. And I ran up the stairs. I smelled gunpowder. It just opened the door, and it was just absolutely. A mother should not see her son like that, you know.
I know.
So.
And I'm sure that that was something that you've not forgotten, something that has stayed with you, something that still reverberates for you.
That's right.
Today.
You have to find a new normal. You know,
So,
you know,
yes.
mothers like me who have lost a child, you're always a little broken, you know.
So this is what set you on a journey of trying to find out if Eric was still alive, if Eric was okay somewhere, and so you decided to try some psychic mediums,
Mm-hmm.
and you came upon Jamie,
Right.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
And Jamie, it's very funny in the book that she does seem to have an almost brother-sister teasing relationship.
Oh gosh, yeah, he's an annoying, pestering little brother. She's
Yes.
a big sister.
And Jamie's full name is?
Jamie Butler.
Okay, Jamie Butler, and she is a psychic medium in Houston, Texas.
Right.
Okay.
No, she's not in Houston.
Okay.
Excuse me. She's in Atlanta.
Okay,
So
in
we do
Atlanta.
all of our correspondences over
Okay.
the phone. But before
Okay.
I sought a medium,
Uh-huh.
the first questions I had was, is Eric gone forever? And
Right.
if he's not, where is he? And then about 3 days after his death, I get this call from my father, the atheist. And he sounded really rattled on the phone. He said, Elisa, Eric was just standing right in front of me.
Oh my.
In
So
the flesh.
that must have really rattled him, having a
it rattled me
lifetime
too.
of, yes.
Yeah, it rattled me too. So that's what made me start my journey. That was it. That catapulted me on that journey from skeptic to belief. It took me a long time to get to become a believer. But then I started reading everything: quantum physics,
Right.
near-death experiences, alternate dimensions, etc. When I exhausted that,
Uh-huh.
that's when I decided to try a medium.
Okay. So you had done some research. Could he be alive? Is there a scientific way that he could be alive? Does this make sense that the energy continues? Then you set out to find someone who could connect with him.
Yes.
And so you felt that Jamie made what were the things initially that made you know that Jamie was the person that had really connected with your son? Are there certain things that made you go, oh, this is Eric, this is my boy? Because
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, first of all, if you had asked me what I thought when I thought about a medium, it just conjures up this image of a
turban and
gypsy hunched over a
Yes.
crystal ball. I'm really afraid, I'm
Yes.
ashamed to say that right now, looking
Yes.
back. But she just pegged his personality so perfectly.
Okay.
His boyish charm, his mischievousness, his horrible language,
His-
sailor talk.
and that's another thing that a lot of people would not understand. Because I do medium work, I understand that sometimes a spirit will come across with exactly the personality they had in life, or you wouldn't know it was them. That if they started speaking in very flowery prose, you'd go, that's not my kid.
Exactly.
So Eric in the book does use a few words that are not heavenly.
I know. A good one. That's a good one, Diane. But
Yes.
And but I have this blog, Channeling Eric, and the
Yes.
blog members love it. They find
Yes.
it very endearing.
Absolutely. I want to really go into that in
We'll do
a
that.
while, because it's a very important thing that you're doing.
Thank you very much.
So when the first time you met with Jamie or spoke with Jamie and decided that indeed this person is connecting with my son, Is it one thing? Is it several things? What should someone look for? Because I know that in the world of mediums, there are some people out there who are phenomenal, and there are some people out there who are well-meaning but will say, oh, this person misses you and they love you and they're smiling at you and they're handing you flowers.
I know.
And they don't mean anything negative by it, but they're not really necessarily proving to you that they're connecting.
Exactly.
So what do you look for?
Well, I didn't know what to look for at first. I just went with the flow, and I think that picking up the person's personality is very important.
Okay.
Because really, when you die, you just shed your body like a suit of clothes. That's it. I eventually found out. But just validating things, like she was able to validate a lot of things that there's no way she could have known, like how he died, the fact that he was sitting in his chair when he died, that he used a gun, what kind of gun it was,
That's
the clothes he
pretty
was
amazing.
wearing at the time, and just her authenticness.
Okay.
You know, it wasn't like talking to an ascended master or something like that.
And you could sense the lack of ego in this woman, that it just wasn't there.
Not at all. She's very homespun, innocent, gets really rattled. She had a lot of trouble when Eric started dropping the F-bombs. She would blush and stammer, and now she still stammers every once in a while, but she's used to it.
But I can attest to the fact that some spirits come through using language that you wouldn't necessarily feel is heavenly language, because it is one of the only ways. You know, I have a friend, and I told him if he passed over and didn't come back with a few coarse comments, I wouldn't believe it was him. So Eric, it's interesting, he comes across with some very, very intelligent scientific rhetoric. He comes across with comments about people that are quite funny. And
it's actually a funny book.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds like it would be just very sad, but it's hilarious, and it's a book of hope.
Yes. And that's one of the things that I think most of us are looking for in reading about the afterlife, reading about people's experiences with mediums. We're looking for some type of probability that this goes on.
Yes.
And it's something, as a skeptic, you know, we were talking earlier and about the fact that blind skepticism isn't bright, and blind belief isn't bright, that you really have to explore and look for the signs that tell you this is real. You have to own that or it's not yours. So
absolutely.
What is you said recently there was something that really, again, just hammered home to you. This is my son.
Oh gosh, it was incredible. First, I will say that he pranked and visited at the very beginning so many family members, so many friends, and my father. And
so they saw him, or they felt him?
Oh
or
gosh!
they heard him?
There's so many stories, all sorts of stories. He did everything possible,
but
he didn't come to me for a long time. Eventually, he did, and there were so many things that happened that just defied explanation. But still, I slowly went from 0% sure to 90% sure. I stuck there. I couldn't make that leap to 100%, and I think the reason is because, and we were talking about this earlier, I was afraid. I mean, seriously, what if I did believe 100% that Eric is still alive somewhere, and then I found out it was not true? But that'd be like losing him again, but forever. So I will tell everybody, this is not the wishful thinking of a grieving mother at all.
Well, that is what it's important that we look at, is what are the things. So you said something recently, even more, that you're still even more going, wow, this is my son. What happened recently?
I was hovering around 90%, and then I got this call from, I think it was an email, from a blog member.
Okay.
She said she heard 3 voices on one of the recorded sessions that we did like a year and a half earlier. And I thought, no. During the live session, we didn't hear anything, and there certainly wasn't anybody else in the room. But I said, okay, I'll listen. So I did. And 3 voices. One of them was Eric's. And I know you mothers out there, we know the sound of our own kids' voice. So he had this special way of saying breakfast like a child, breakfast.
Oh.
And that was there. And his verbal tick that he had, like that was there. I even heard him pacing, which he did all the time.
Wow.
He crossed his arms and paced around my kitchen island constantly. So I was intrigued enough. I thought, I'm going to take this to a sound professional, and I
Yes.
did. And the guy said the voices are not human. There were little micro distortions in some of them, and
Yes.
and one of the voices sounded like they were whispering this close to the mic, but you don't see anything on video. But
Yes.
I think the coolest thing is the voices left no voice signature at all, nothing. And it apparently does not happen with humans.
Well, with electronic voice phenomena, as they call it, they have, there have been hundreds and hundreds of recorded voices that cannot be explained. There have been people who've done research on this for many years.
Yes.
And I can attest to the fact that I've also gotten spirit voices on tape. And that, for me, probably was one of the most amazing moments of my life, too, to listen to this.
Yes.
Because it makes it real in a way that it hasn't been. Each step brings us closer and closer, brings us more. So for you, that has put it over the top for you.
Yeah, 100%, never going back. And I don't know, just you're connected with your child more because you hear them directly. You're not hearing them through a spirit
You're hearing them
translator.
directly.
You are hearing your child or whoever your deceased loved one is. It just was incredible and still is. And he's had a number of times where on radio shows
Yes.
or conference call, trailing call, where he's shouted out things. And he does it so clearly. It's not the typical EVP where there's a lot of static in it.
Exactly. And that those Class A voices are not common. And so the fact that he can do that, this is a very strong spirit.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, Dr. Medhus is going to tell us more about Eric's messages from the other side, what he wants us to know, and about her blog, Channeling Eric. We'll be right back. Hello, I'm Diane Gremmel with the New Era Times, an online magazine that bridges spirit and science. And we're here with Dr. Elisa Medhus, who is the author of My Son in the Afterlife. Dr. Medhus has come to find a lot of differences in the way she sees the world since the death of her son. So we were talking before the break, and you've started a blog that is...
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And is the purpose of that blog to share what Eric has to say about the afterlife?
Not initially. At first,
Okay.
it was just a way to share, to purge my grief.
Okay.
And I don't know why, but I seem to heal better when I help others. So I just wanted to create this safe place for other people to share their pain, but feel, protected. So they can be encouraged and supported by the other members. But then I started sharing some of the pranks and other signs of communication with Eric that my family member and friends started experiencing. And then eventually I started sharing some of the answers to the questions that I asked Eric about the afterlife, death,
Wow.
spirits, and so on. And so the whole thing just took off. It's like,
One
Now
person
it's
told
a
their
lot of
friend, who
its own.
told their friend, who told their friend.
Yeah,
And so now
absolutely.
thousands of people are tuning in.
yes, we have like 30,000 members now,
That's wonderful.
which is, for this particular area, this particular subject matter is pretty amazing.
So if you were to look at what Eric wants us to know on Earth, he feels that he's a teacher, I know. And so what do you feel his messages really bring for us? What is it that he wants us to know?
Well, he wants us to know a lot, but I think the two most important things, he wants us to know that the relationship with our loved ones who have died doesn't have to end. They should continue, even grow. But the thing he talks about the most is that we are emotional beings. We're not really even spiritual beings. We are made of emotions, and emotions are a form of energy. He says that we are sentient energy that's self-aware. And he believes in emotional honesty. He thinks that really, or he says that really will help us handle so many struggles. Emotional honesty within ourselves, and that takes really having this inner awareness, and emotional honesty with others, setting boundaries.
Liked about what your son had to say is he recognizes that the left brain is sort of a grounding operating system that limits our view of spirit so that we can have these emotional experiences on Earth. And the science behind what he talks about is pretty interesting. Did you know you had a scientific genius on your hands when he was here?
You wouldn't have been able to guess that in school, but actually he was pretty good at physics, but everything else, no.
that was the part of the book that I found the most interesting, is that he does get into the physics of time and how we're experiencing time. And to me, I found that a lot of what he had to say resonated with what I know. And I know you did research afterwards and found that what he had to say resonated with a lot of physicists,
Exactly.
correct? Okay. And so if you go back and say Einstein explained it this way, Eric's explaining it in that way.
That's right.
Okay. And was that something that would have been known to you or to Jamie, or is this something that you feel clearly has come through Eric from the other side?
It's so many things, not only science, but so many things have come up in literature or scientific papers that it's exactly what Eric says.
Okay.
So it's really incredible. For example, he says that the soul is tethered to the body in these tiny little structures called microtubules.
Okay.
And those are little tiny...
I've read something about microtubules recently on the internet.
Yes, I think it just came out.
Yes.
And but those are little intracellular structures that are involved in cell division and things like that. But when we die, he says that energy just builds up and builds up within that hollow tube until spark, it disconnects. But in some cases, he says that something goes awry with that disconnection process, and the energy builds up more and more and more until boosh.
Spontaneous human combustion.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So he explains that too. I think it's quite interesting.
I do too, because that gives a scientific explanation for something that people have been wondering about for years that perhaps they can prove.
It's true.
So when you're writing the blog, you've had a lot of people tell you that this has made a huge difference in their life.
Gosh, yes. So many people, and I don't know how many comments and emails I get every day. So many people say it's transformed them, sometimes so much it's transformed their families. And in some cases, several cases, it's literally saved their lives. And I find it a bit overwhelming because, I won't say it's a burden, but it's quite a sense of responsibility. In a way, I'm still this little broken woman, you know, that's trying to understand all this. So, but I think the most rewarding thing is the fact that it's literally saved lives, because, you know, I think we're saving lives more than I ever could have as a physician.
There you go. And that's another question that I'd love to ask is, how has your attitude towards being a physician changed in the time that you've spent researching life after death since Eric's death?
Well, for one, I've seen a lot of people die. And I knew that spark, there was something that went away, but I wasn't sure why. And of course, my left brain kept me from proceeding further and exploring that. I was a doctor who, I'm not the type of doctor that, oh, I'm a doctor. I love my patients, they're family members to me, and every time I go into exam room, I make a pact with myself that I'm not leaving that room until I've made that person's life just a little bit better. So I suppose I would say that I'm an empathic, you know, physician.
Okay. So there's what I'm getting out of this is there's not a lot of ego involved. It's simply about helping the patient. And do you feel that that's become even stronger since Eric's death?
Yes.
Okay.
It has, definitely. I've seen a lot of grievers. I've seen a lot of lost souls.
Have you been able to comfort people prior to their death with the information that you have from Eric? Has that been of comfort to people?
Well, I didn't know what to tell them. I would comfort them and say, I'm here for you. I'd be there for the family. But, you know, I didn't know anything about life after death, so I couldn't say, don't worry, you're going to be fine. You know.
So if you were to say to people now, is there a life after death, Dr. Medhus?
Yeah, I would say, without question, there
Okay.
is.
And is there anything you can tell us about what the afterlife is like, according to your son Eric?
That's a great question. He says it's really formulated based on the beliefs you have about it when you, before you die.
Okay.
See, their thought creates reality instantaneously, and that is something that is a phrase that we use in physics. So if you think about purple grass, there's purple grass. If you say, I'm going to go to Venice, boom,
I
you're
could
in
have a
Venice.
great time with that.
I would too. Talk about the law of attraction being like that.
So it's creating with your mind what you want to see.
Exactly. And so if you believe in a hell, you're going to create for yourself some sort of hellish type
Until
condition.
you realize
There's
you
no
don't
hell.
need it.
There's no hell, but or if you're an atheist, you're gonna
Create
say,
nothingness.
wake up in darkness.
But it's interesting how little it took. What does your father say now? That
Oh gosh, my father is never going to change his mind. He's just he's a militant atheist. And,
even though he literally saw his
Yeah.
grandson after he passed away.
Right, and even that EVP, I said, who's this, Eric? He said, that's Eric. I mean, Jose, I mean, Dad, whatever. He said, yeah, that's Eric. Well, so now do you believe? He said, nah, that's just one thing.
His left brain is too strong.
I guess it
Yes.
is. Plus his ego.
Yes, but I have a feeling that deep down something has probably changed with him.
I think so.
The-
He just won't admit it. He's got his
Yes.
pride. Yeah.
So when we can create within the afterlife, are we with our friends? Are we with our family? Are we with like spirits?
Anybody we choose to be with. If I were in the afterlife and I thought about my sister Denise, she would be right there. But ordinarily, your guides
Mhm.
and your deceased family members would be there for you. And sometimes it's people from past lives. that were close to
Interesting.
you.
Okay, so they would be sort of part of a soul group that we're part of.
That's right.
So even the husband I had in 1870, I might
Sure.
be. That's wonderful.
But it doesn't have to be just your soul groups, your soul
Yes.
families.
Okay,
You can be with anybody. You can
Okay.
be with
Elvis.
Jesus or Elvis. Yes, absolutely.
I think Jesus we'll put him way above Elvis.
I
but
think so.
Yes,
Although there's no hierarchy.
I understand.
In there's no inferior, superior. There's no comparison. I mean, as human beings, we like to compare, and measure, and sort.
Right.
And
I know
label.
you were working on a scale in the book of like, this person's a 4.5 versus.
Exactly.
And I'm with you that there's no right or wrong as much as there is cause and effect.
Right, and we need, we need that. Otherwise, how can we grow spiritually if we don't have the cause and effect?
Right.
But they don't have that there because there's no linear time at all.
And that I liked the way Eric explained it, talking about a spring being stretched. He had a good grasp of the laws of physics and explaining this. And I found that interesting because it did not seem from your description of him that he would have been someone before leaving the body who really had access to as many ways of explaining things. He's a good teacher.
He really is. He uses a lot of beautiful analogies.
Yes.
It's just incredible. And that makes it easier. He dumps it down for us, in other words.
But that's what is it? Einstein said the best teachers, and if you can't explain it in a simple way, you don't understand it well enough to explain
that's
it.
true.
And it's absolutely true. So I do think the fact that he quote unquote dumbs it down is one more thing that shows me this is something that I trust more and more as I read about it. Now, there have been, I noticed on your blog, people who wanted to speak with famous Sir Isaac Newton or Einstein or different. Do souls want to come through and share with us? Do they want to come through?
Well, the only person we have not been able to talk to is Madeline O'Hare.
Well, I guess
Yes.
that we don't exist to her, right?
Well, maybe not, but
I-
you would think over there. I think she's just embarrassed.
Well, I believe that you can disbelieve in a hierarchy of a church without necessarily disbelieving in your continued existence. So she should not be embarrassed.
Absolutely.
But I would love it if she would come through and speak. So you've tried to get in touch with this energy.
Absolutely. And
Okay.
we just can't. She won't come forward.
So if you said to Eric, I'd really like to talk to Albert Einstein, Eric could try and make that connection.
Absolutely. For some reason, he's really good at
Socializing.
fetching
Yes.
these people. And a lot of mediums, including Jamie,
Yes.
can't bring forward celebrities.
Right.
Some of them sure can, but
There's a reason for that, because
Yeah.
I believe that the real validity in this work isn't saying I talked to Marilyn Monroe. It's being able to connect with those people that you loved and have some type of proof that their existence goes on. And that goes way beyond who's a celebrity and who's not a celebrity.
the interesting thing about the celebrities is we don't ask voyeuristic questions at all.
Right.
We want to learn from somebody that we can connect with. We can't just say, oh, you know, my plumber, let's bring you forward, because people can't connect. But
they can relate
ask them,
to,
they can
yes.
relate, and
Okay.
that's a better word.
They have a context for that person.
Yeah, that, exactly. And so we can ask them, is there anything you regret? What were you here to learn and teach? And what is your message to humanity? So it
either resonates or it doesn't resonate. That's
right.
Just, yes.
So there's no validating questions like, okay, what was your last meal? Or
Okay.
who was there when you died? Some of them will actually share that, but we don't ask those questions.
One of the things that I've found as a medium is that we can't always ask for specific information as much as we can receive what is given to us, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So I don't know if you've found, for instance, there are a lot of people who have made, Susie Smith was famous for making an afterlife code that if repeated through a medium would be proof of her survival. And so far, no one has brought that through. John Edwards said that there were 3 different specific things that he and his mother had planned after her death for her to come through with. And that 2 of them eventually came through, but for the longest time, the 3rd one did not.
I wonder why that is.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you feel like we are able to access any information, or simply what they will share? Are we receivers? Because I find...
I think so.
Yes.
And sometimes the spirits, you know, guides, really can't interfere with our path, our lesson. They can influence, but they can't change. So part of that, maybe I don't want to receive this information.
So if we're supposed to have faith and not proof, but faith,
exactly.
Then, and that is our particular lesson in this lifetime, that's what we will receive.
Right.
Okay.
And you have to have that awareness. For example, here's something he says, like, maybe you try beans for the first time in your life, you know? And then all of a sudden, all you see everywhere is beans, beans, beans. So you have to open up that awareness. Like when you're pregnant, all of a sudden everybody seems to be pregnant around you. So awareness is very important.
Absolutely. And that's what I tell people. If suddenly you notice 15 ladies in red hats, it's not necessarily that they decided that day to wear red hats.
Exactly.
It's that you noticed it today, that is part of your consciousness. So we're only allowed from the other side what our consciousness can receive, correct?
Exactly. And what we're ready to receive.
Right. So different mediums, different psychics will receive different information because that is what they are ready to receive.
Exactly. Oh,
okay.
Yeah.
So lastly, Dr. Medhus, have you developed a system of communication yourself with Eric? I know that you've talked through the medium Jamie Butler to Eric, but have you developed your own way of listening to him or communicating with him?
I talk to him all the time now. I'll have to preface this by saying I have a busy mind. It's very difficult for me to still my mind. I'm thinking about, did I unload the dishwasher? Or
It's hard. It takes effort.
So it does take some discipline. But Eric told me that would help to to change my brain waves to 14 to 16 megahertz.
And it's fascinating that there are studies about that. Absolutely.
Oh, I did not know that.
So have you been able to slow your brainwave state to that level?
Oh yeah, I went to iTunes and bought the correct frequency of beta binaural beats.
Wonderful.
It has to be the beta range. And oh my gosh, when I first started listening to that, my mother was there, my sister Denise was there, they were popping in like crazy. So that works.
That is fantastic.
And you know, I talk to him all the time. And one thing that he suggests that others try is called the hand game.
Okay.
So you put your hands on your thighs, palms up.
Okay.
You designate one yes and one no.
Okay. I see what you're saying.
And then you ask a yes or no question, obviously. Like, are you happy?
Yes, it's using your own body as a yes,
as
interesting.
a tool.
Yes.
And then you wait for some change in sensation. It could be like, for me, Eric usually, it feels like he's blowing on my palm.
Okay.
Sometimes you get tingling. Sometimes the temperature changes. It could be anything.
I'm glad you mentioned that because everybody perceives spirit differently, and for some people it's really a physical experience. For others, they hear things. For others, like you said, pictures were flashing in front of your eyes.
Yeah.
So, wanting to communicate, you found ways, the binaural beats was one method you used to get into that brainwave state, but you found methods to do this yourself.
Yeah.
So your relationship with him continues on a regular basis.
Oh gosh, it's really even richer than it ever was before, and it continues to grow.
So do your, I know that you have several children.
Mm-hmm.
Do they also feel that they have contacted or are in contact with their brother?
Oh, some of them have had particular instances where they've seen Eric in the passenger
Wow.
seat of the car, or they have communications in other ways. Michelle was in my bathroom. That's one of my daughters. I have 5 kids. And all of a sudden, the faucet starts to turn on full blast. And he turns on appliances that
He's
are
a joker.
unplugged. Oh yeah, he's a joker, absolutely.
This is fascinating, and I wanted people to remember your blog is Channeling Eric, Eric with a K on the end, .com.
Yes.
And Dr. Medhus' book is My Son and the Afterlife, and this is a very interesting read. I highly suggest it. I'm Diane Gremmel with the New Era Times, and we are here. Dr. Medhus, it is
Thank
fabulous
you, Diane. You
getting
are
to talk
such
to
a
you.
great host.
You are wonderful for sharing this with us, and I know a lot of people are going to benefit
I hope
from
so.
your book and from your website.
Hope so.
From the New Era Times, we thank you.